For companies owned and controlled by veterans, federal government contracting can be big business. Annually, the government aims to award at least 3% of all prime contracting dollars to veteran-owned companies. In recent fiscal years, that's amounted to over $16 billion and includes all manner of supplies, construction, and services. Doing business with Uncle Sam can be highly advantageous for veterans, and there are many opportunities just waiting for you to take advantage of. The U.S. government plans to award at least 3% of all prime contracting dollars to veteran-owned companies to purchase supplies, construction, and services. With so many great opportunities on the table, it should come as no surprise that there are efforts being taken by the federal government to ensure these advantages are only going to legitimate veteran-owned small businesses, known in government contracting parlance as VOSBs, veteran-owned small businesses, and SDVOSBs, service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses. Unfortunately, there have been a few bad actors attempting to defraud the government by falsely claiming veteran status in hopes of reaping the benefits set aside for our nation's heroes. In an effort to prevent this, a strict verification process has been put into place with unique rules and processes required to achieve veteran-owned small business status. The penalties for attempting to scam this system are harsh and may even include imprisonment. To avoid these penalties and any other frustrations, the following video will provide a detailed overview of the verification process. We'll begin with the big picture, move on to eligibility requirements and the application process, and finally discuss how to maintain ongoing eligibility. Given the complexity of government regulations, we may not cover every issue you might encounter. For additional assistance, please contact a qualified verification assistance counselor in your area. These counselors are well-trained and will gladly assist veterans in completing their applications at no charge. These counselors are available through Procurement Technical Assistance Centers, or PTACs. Verification counselors are trained by the VA Center for Verification and Evaluation, also known as the CVE, to assist veterans with their applications for free. To find a verification assistance counselor in your area, visit this website. So, you want to qualify as an SDVOSB or VOSB and pursue federal contracts. Great! Here are a few things you should know before getting started. First, the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs requires that SDVOSBs and VOSBs be formally certified, a process the VA calls verification, to bid on SDVOSB and VOSB solicitations. An office in the VA, known as the Center for Verification and Evaluation, or CVE, processes verification applications. You'll be hearing a lot about CVE as this video continues. The VA is the only agency authorized to set aside contracts for VOSBs. SDVOSBs and VOSBs usually take priority over all other contractors. Other federal agencies, like the Department of Defense, may have opportunities set aside for service-disabled veterans, but at these agencies, companies can self-certify that they meet the requirements for SDVOSB status. Let's be careful here. This may seem like it's easy, but the government can and will review a company's veteran-owned status before awarding a contract. If you find yourself being reviewed without being in compliance, you could be in for a real mess. If you're thinking about submitting an application for verification, it's wise to understand the eligibility rules first. So let's talk about what it takes to be an eligible SDVOSB or VOSB for federal government contracting. It may be obvious, but an SDVOSB or VOSB must be a small business. But what exactly is a small business? Every business operates in a primary industry. The federal government categorizes industry by NAICS code and establishes size standards per industry that represent the largest size a business may be to remain classified as a small business in that industry. According to the Small Business Administration, or SBA, there are certain standards that must be met in order to be considered a small business, and it's crucial to meet these standards to be eligible for verification. The SBA uses formulas for calculating whether a business qualifies as a small business or not, but this can often become complicated. Remember, it's always best to seek qualified assistance if you're having any trouble. You don't want to risk self-certifying incorrectly. To qualify as a VOSB, a company usually must be owned and controlled by one or more veterans. The term veteran generally refers to a person who served in the military and completed their service without a dishonorable discharge. To qualify as an SDVOSB, a company usually must be owned and controlled by one or more service-disabled veterans. A service-disabled veteran is a veteran who has either a valid disability rating from the Department of Veterans Affairs or a disability determination from the Department of Defense. Keep in mind, any disability rating can qualify a veteran as service-disabled. Other benefit qualifications are not necessary. To qualify as a VOSB or SDVOSB, one or more veterans, or SDVs, must own at least 51% of the company. Additionally, the ownership must be both direct and unconditional. But what does that mean exactly? Direct ownership means the veteran must personally own their stock or membership holdings without going through intermediaries, such as holding companies. In fact, contrary to a very common misconception, a wholly owned subsidiary of a verified SDVOSB or VOSB does not inherit its parent status because the subsidiary isn't directly owned by veterans. And unconditional ownership means that non-veterans cannot solely purchase the veteran's equity stake. Consider this example. If a veteran held 51% of a LLC and a non-veteran 49%, the regulations would not allow the non-veteran to buy 2% of the veteran's stake. Be sure to review all requirements for unconditional ownership and adjust your corporate paperwork to satisfy these regulations. Let's talk about control. This is one of the most common issues with eligibility requirements and can be a real hiccup in the process if not given enough attention. Regulations require not only direct and unconditional ownership, but also that veterans are in control of the company almost without exception. It's not enough just to be in control of the big picture decision-making of a business. A veteran must also be in control of the day-to-day operations and should hold the highest officer position within the company. And much like ownership, the control also must be unconditional, meaning veterans have complete control over all decision-making for the company. There can be no risk of interference from non-veterans attempting to block those decisions. There are a few extraordinary circumstances in which non-veterans may be granted veto rights, such as declaring bankruptcy, but this is not mandatory. The regulations also provide several situations under which veterans will be presumed not to control the company. These include: a non-veteran or non-service disabled veteran earns compensation higher than the veteran holding the highest officer position. A critical license needed for the company to do business is held by a non-veteran. The veteran does not live a reasonable commuting distance from the company's office and/or job sites. The veteran holds outside employment or other obligations, such as being a student, that interferes with his or her ability to manage the company full-time during ordinary business hours of firms operating in the same industry. The company has business relationships with non-service disabled veteran individuals or entities which cause such dependence that the applicant or concern cannot exercise independent business judgment without great economic risk. See 13 CFR Section 125.13. Be sure to carefully study the control regulations before submitting an application. So, we've covered ownership and control, but there's something else to consider. A unique requirement from the VA insists that all applicants be in good character. We all make mistakes, but there are a few red flags that a background check may turn up, potentially bringing your application to a disappointing end. Felony convictions, questionable business integrity, and unpaid taxes are a few examples. Now that our eligibility is taken care of, we're ready to submit an application to CVE for verification. This process will be completed entirely online. All you have to do is register an account, log in, and then upload the required documents. And of course, applying is free. Once you're ready to begin the process, visit this website. The documents you're uploading will be used to determine whether or not you are eligible. Be sure to follow the instructions carefully to avoid any errors that could cause problems down the road. The documents required for you specifically depend on your business. CVE requires different documents for different legal entities. Be sure to find the right list for your entity type. Also, if a particular document doesn't exist for your business, CVE expects you to provide what is called a detailed letter of explanation. Some documents are self-explanatory, while others may be more difficult. Here are the 4 most common documents that previous applicants have found troublesome. The governing documents, typically bylaws or operating agreement, must demonstrate that veterans or service-disabled veterans unconditionally control the company, with the possible exception of the 5 extraordinary circumstances permitted under 13 CFR Section 125.11. Non-compliant governing documents are probably the most common reason verification applications are rejected. Remember, there are special rules for SDVOSB and VOSB, and standard governing documents may not be compliant for our verification. CVE asks for the veterans' resumes, as well as those of other owners, officers, and managers. While a resume sounds like a simple request to fulfill, it's easy to send the wrong signals. For starters, it's very important to include your new VOSB or SDVOSB on your resume, and be mindful of the eligibility requirements when listing your job duties. For veterans, unconditional ownership and control must be made clear. Place an emphasis on the day-to-day duties rather than just big-picture control. For non-veterans, avoid action verbs such as manage and oversee, as these may cause CVE to question how much influence the non-veteran has on the business. CVE is going to be interested in how you're controlling the business finances, but problems occasionally arise when someone other than a veteran is named on the bank signature cards. Typically, a letter of explanation is all that's needed just to confirm that a veteran is in unconditional control over the bank accounts. CVE asks the company to submit portions of its most recent proposals and contracts, as well as checks paid to various entities like landlords. CVE looks to see whether a veteran or service-disabled veteran, as appropriate, signed each document. While not required, it's a good idea to have a veteran sign all proposals and contracts for your business. CVE will be looking for this to ensure there are no issues with unconditional control. Otherwise, we may have to write another letter of explanation. A CVE application goes through 4 distinct phases: intake, assessment, federal review, and decision. For more on what each of these processes entails, see this website. It's a good idea to regularly log into your account to check the progress of your application. The entire process can be confusing, and not everyone gets it right the first time. If something goes wrong, CVE does offer a post-review findings program. If problems are identified in the assessment phase, CVE will give you a chance to address the issues. But don't delay. There's a 5 business day limit. If you can't fix the problems within that time frame, you will have the option of withdrawing your application and resubmitting at a later time. Once verified by CVE, your company will receive a 3-year eligibility term. During this time, you must inform CVE of any changes that would potentially affect eligibility. Be on the lookout. CVE may perform a verification examination, and your company's SDVOSB or VOSB status could be canceled if you are no longer found to be eligible. If this happens, expect to be notified by CVE in writing. Don't panic. A cancellation can be appealed to an administrative judge. America's veterans have made extraordinary sacrifices for our nation. The powerful VOSB and SDVOSB contracting programs are one way the country can say thank you. These programs come with strict eligibility requirements to ensure that the benefits they offer go to deserving veterans. While these eligibility requirements may seem frustrating, they're in place to help protect the integrity of the program. If you're a veteran or service-disabled veteran interested in government contracting, the VOSB and SDVOSB programs can be an incredible opportunity. With the knowledge you've gained in this video, and the help of a qualified verification assistance counselor through your local PTAC, you too may be able to join the ranks of verified veteran-owned small businesses and participate in the $16 billion or more in federal prime contract dollars awarded annually to these companies.